Party with your host, Dustin Rybka.
Hello and welcome to Sex Party. I'm your host, Dustin Rybka, and I'm so fucking happy to have you here this week. This week on the show, we have Gianna Rackham. Gianna is a relationship coach, but she's also a fucking badass. She's a badass because she's not afraid to let it all out, her full story, why she's a relationship coach, what got her there, the traumas that led up to her making the decision to become a relationship coach. She lets us in on a lot of darker things, so I do want to give a trigger warning for all my peeps that might have an issue with it, want to avoid it. There is some light talk of not wanting to live anymore and what happens in that scenario. There is some chat about and again, it's light chat about emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual assault. If you want to skip over all that stuff, the 20-minute mark is where you'd want to start. But otherwise, this episode is really incredible, and I applaud her for showing up and bringing her full self. She's an amazing guest. It's an amazing interview. Can't wait for you to see it, to hear it, to experience it. So without further ado, this is my conversation with Gianna Rackham.
This week's conversation.
Gianna Rackham, welcome to Sex Party. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yikes. No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm great.
Deflecting.
Yeah, I do that a lot, actually. I deflect. You'll notice probably in this interview, I deflect quite a bit. Depending on how it goes. So you're on the show. I got you here. We haven't really talked that much prior. You know, there's been a little bit back and forth, just to be transparent about that, because I think what you do is really cool, and there's specific things that I want to key in on that you do that are really cool and kind of different from some other guests that have been on the show. For the people who don't know who you are and aren't familiar, can you introduce yourself and maybe talk a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, totally. So I'm a relationship coach, and I tend to work with women, single and in relationships, a lot around self-worth, codependency, healthy boundaries, attracting in and creating a really healthy, satisfying relationship, essentially. And I put my own spin on things where I don't know. I'm kind of like this spiritual meets psychology in one, so there's talk about spirituality and law of attraction, but also your attachment style and
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that, because I feel like a lot of people, myself included, so I would consider myself a skeptic, right? I think a lot of people are, some way worse than others, but at the same time, and I've said it a fucking jillion times on the show, I'm fascinated by all of the different things, right? I think we all should be a little fascinated by that. So that being said, relationship coach, I heard a lot of buzzwords in there, right? Like spirituality, I heard codependency, I think, right? How do you, and psychology too, which is great. How do you sort of reconcile the psychological stuff with the spiritual stuff, right? Because I feel like that would be kind of difficult, because they're two separate spheres maybe with relationships.
I feel like they interconnect really well. And let me just say, I'm not interested in convincing anyone of anything. I just don't care to do that in life at this point.
Good. Yes. Love that.
No, thank
Love
you.
that.
You do you if you want.
Yeah.
Don't care. If you think I'm a psycho, that's fine.
Right.
We're good here. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm good with me.
Totally.
You do you. But
100%.
So yeah, with that said, definitely going to share my truth about So, yeah. So, I mean, for me, when I intertwine the two, like through my work and with clients, it's a reflection of how they're just intertwined in my mind naturally.
Sure.
So, you know, like, so for example, today I was talking about something on my Instagram stories relating to, there's like this psychology component, right? Where like, so much of our relationship patterning often starts in childhood, right? Like our attachment styles are formed there. A lot of like our core wounds and beliefs and triggers start there. Not always, but most of them for most people. But then there's like this spiritual component, right? Because for me, that is a big part of why I'm so passionate around the area of relationships, was because of like the upbringing that I experienced, and just like my process and healing through a lot of that trauma and how it like impacted my relationships. Especially romantic relationships, but really like all relationships in general. Um, and so there was the spiritual component where it's like it truly feels true to me, and I believe that we are born into the families that we are for a reason. Like, I don't think that it's random. I think that the childhood that I had, for better or worse, like put me on the trajectory of who I am as a human. That I believe I'm meant to be in this world. Like, I don't think my existence is random, regardless of planned or unplanned
Sure.
pregnancy. Like I don't think our desires are random. Like our true desires. So that's just like one example for you, I guess.
No, I love that because, and the reason that I asked that question first is because I think what happens a lot of times, and thank you so much for like being honest and like bringing who you are like right up front like that, and just being like, this is who the fuck I am. This is what I do. I believe in it. You don't need to. You know what I mean? I fucking love that. It's fucking rock star as fuck. So thank you so much for that. Because that helps sort of set the tone like right off the rip, right? Which I love to do. But going back to why I asked that first, because what I found with this show, right, is you can be as skeptical as you want. And spirituality seems to come down to a lens in which people view things. And that's what's so fucking cool about it. And you're right, like there are these spheres that do sort of intersect, like psychology, spirituality. And both of those things can be insanely like not just important but like vital with your relationships, romantic, sexual, or otherwise, like all of your relationships, if you choose whether or not to view it. And I think you can be a non-believer in everything, but still internally you sort of start to see your own patterns, and that in itself I think is a form of spirituality a little bit, so yeah, totally. Okay. So what made you want to be a relationship coach? And like, were there certain incidents? Was there one? Was it just the way that you grew up? And why did you pick to do it in the way that you have, in more of a spiritual, more of a psychological way, and instead of like, oh, this is what's going on in the world, I'm just gonna take that, make it my own?
So a little out of order here, but like
Sure, yeah, we love out of
you
order.
asked, but the way that I do things is an extension of who I am as a person. You know what I mean? Like, so the relationship coaching that I do, it's just an extension of my truth and what I believe and how I think and what I have learned to be true for me, about life and relationships, and sharing that with others in a way that benefits them as well, for those that are, that resonate and all of that as well. But why relationship coaching? So Cliff Notes version, it's not just like one thing per se, but I had an accumulation of desires that really led me to that, where growing up, so my mom is a psychic medium. So I was like raised by like a super like woo-woo woman, which I love.
Yeah.
But simultaneously, my childhood was also very toxic. And so my mom was married to this man throughout my entire childhood, complete psychopath. very abusive in all the ways. And my mom had, you know, a lot of, and just so growing up around that just like significantly impacted me. And just as well as like my relationship with my father. And I just developed all of these just like anxious and avoidant tendencies that just were so, and like low self-worth that was just so noticeable and just so negatively impactful to my quality of life and relationships, like from a very young age. And relationships in particular, romantic relationships, because those tend to be like a very like tender, just like vulnerable like space where our shit just comes up. And so those were just a very painful, significant source for me, like very early on in my life. And so I was also simultaneously kind of like, got to this point where I was like really looking at myself and, because I got to a really dark place, for a lot of reasons. And I was really trying to heal and like want to be alive. And so I was doing a lot of healing work and exploring my own journey and my own truths around life and spirituality and just, why I experienced certain things. And it started to really positively benefit me. And I just knew that like, just from that place, I just naturally just like felt like I just had to give it to other people. Like I was literally like from a young age, just like in these like online chat rooms, like answering people's questions. Like, I know the answer to that. Like, let me share this with you. Like, it was just such a natural like instinct from that place. And then I was just like, you know, and these natural questions started to come up, like, you know, what's my purpose? Like, how do I want to make money? And I just found my way to the coaching world in a very divine way that was just like, wow, like this is it. This is the thing. Like I'm meant for this. And it just felt so right. And just, it was just an undeniable perfect fit. And, yeah. And so learning about the business side of things and just like running an online business and like in the coaching world in particular and learning about like branding and niching and all these things. And those things really resonated with me because I was like, you know, niching, you mean like I can just help people with my favorite things to help people with? Like, fuck yeah, like sign me up for that. And so it was just like perfect. So if that answers your question.
Look, listen, fucking amazing, gorgeous answer, because I feel like and there's a lot of things I want to say, but first of all, again, thank you for going deep for a minute. And I'm wondering if we can go back there for a second, because I do feel like there's probably a lot of people out there potentially listening or watching who grew up with a deep mother and an asshole psychotic father, right? And so maybe they're still sort of lost in the same darkness that you were at, and they can't find their way out. So what I'm wondering is, if can we go back to where you were sort of at the brink of madness, or however you want to put it in your own words, right? In the darkness, and this thing found you. You found this thing. How did you feel? When did you make the decision? Like, that's it. Like, how did it come to you, or how did you come to it?
Yeah. So, just to be really transparent and, you know,
absolutely
trigger warning potentially for some, but, cause I don't know. I'm just at this point with like my journey where like I can just talk about things very openly, and it's just because it's just what happened.
Sure.
And, you know, and I've just healed around these things. So I might talk about things pretty openly, like in abuse and things that might be triggering for some, and the way that I say it. So just saying that in advance is a little warning for people, but yeah. So, I got to this place at a younger age than most, I would say, if we're, you know, going by society standards of like, by this age, you have your career and, you know, that whole society idea that people have, and, you know, measure how worthy of a successful human they are, you know, like, I need to achieve this by this age. And if I don't, I suck. Or like, I'm early, I'm amazing. You know, like, so if we're going by
we're all painfully aware of that place, aren't we, kids?
Yeah, anyways, I could like rant on that for days, but
we'll go back to it.
Okay. But I feel like life just from like a young age just like kicked my ass, like essentially. And in a very polarizing way, and it almost killed me, and I took it into the other direction eventually. But yeah, I was definitely at this because it was my stepfather. He was, he was very abusive, very controlling, physically abusive, emotionally abusive, financially abusive, just psychologically abusive as well, like gaslighting, all the things. And that was just really, really hard to grow up in. And he was a really popular figure in my hometown. He was in the military. And so he was like just very active in our community. And so I had this like really, and everybody loved him. And so it was a really painful experience for me where I felt very powerless and hopeless, and like just like nobody would help me and nobody would come and like save me as a child. And my mom, like I felt like my mom was just like very powerless, and there was just all these things where like from a young age I just like was like had to like parent my mom, had to like save myself, like all of these things. And there was I got a lot out of that, but also trauma and all that. And and so that was happening, and then I also experienced a sexual assault. And then someone very close to me passed away. And there was just a couple of things just all at once. And I just got pushed to this point where I was like, whatever is up there, like I've been raised to be new age, but like, I kind of am like this, punky, like teenager that like hates everything and is an atheist. 'Cause why would God do this to me? Like, whatever. And I just like was at this point where I was like, there's nothing in me that can fight anymore. Like nobody's doing anything. Like nobody's helping me. And like, my dad was, he struggles with an addiction. And so I was like, had this like simultaneous, like massive resentment towards like my biological father, and was like, save me, help me. Like nobody's helping me. And, and so I just got pushed to this point where I was like, not wanting to be alive anymore, honestly. And simultaneously, romantic relationships were just shit and painful. And I just surrendered. Like, I surrendered. And I couldn't tell you exactly what happened the next day or like the very first thing, but I just know from that point, like something, like light got to come into my life because I wasn't fighting so much. And I was just led to certain books, certain teachers, certain things that really just helped me find peace and power and heal and like make sense of my experiences that really just resonated with me. And simultaneously, I was having like these spiritual experiences that just like, it all just like made sense. And so, so that was at a pretty like young age, where I started kind of going into these bigger questions that a lot of people don't maybe look at for quite a while in their lives. And then I got to this point where like I kind of said earlier, I was, started healing and just really wanting to give that back to people. And I didn't really know what that looked like. Like I'd never heard of a coach before in my life. And my mom was a psychic, and I was like, that's a way I can help people, because I was also raised to just be in connection with my intuition as well. And so that was one way I started to kind of give back to people, and I started doing readings and all these things. And I would, in the readings, I would like read things about people, and they would be like, wow, awesome, cool. And then like, I would go immediately into like wanting to help them with whatever I was like picking up on, like with them, like their relationship with their mother, giving them advice, different ways to see it, like affirmations, just these things that were just like really helping people a lot. And I loved that. Like that just, it felt like so good. Like that part just, I loved it. And I was at this phase of life where I was also like, you know, what do I, like, what is my path? You know, like, what do I want to do with my life? And, you know, cause I knew I wanted to do something that felt really in alignment with me and for me. And I also needed to make money, you know, like we need money.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
You know, and
you gotta fund this fucking thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you know, and I did the whole like psychic reading thing for a while, and it just was just not a match. Like I hate like the kind of people that you can attract from there when you're like, I'm a psychic. And then people are like, read my mind. I'm a skeptic. And I'm just like, I am not a seal here to balance a ball on my fucking nose for you. Like,
yeah,
you know, like I really loved the people that were like, I'm stuck and I want to get unstuck, you know, like that, like I loved that. I didn't want these people that were just like not looking at their shit and didn't want to, and like wanted me to like fight with them. Like I don't want to fight you. Like, I'm not here to fight you. Okay. Like I'm
sure,
you know, that's not what I want. And so, yeah. And then I don't know, like, I think just like naturally as I started to just like branch out online through my own interests, and I eventually stumbled upon a coach, and I was like mind blown. And it was just synchronicity of like, what am I going to do with my life? How am I going to make money? And how am I going to make sustainable money? And how am I going to do work that I love and like believe in? And like, it just was perfect from there.
Wow. Okay. Well, first of all, Gianna, you're a fucking badass. And that's really, really amazing. That you shared all of that, every bit of it, because it's really important, right? And I appreciate you coming on this show and just fucking being transparent. I'm sorry for all the shit that happened to you. That's always something that, you know, that sucks, right? Those things. But I do feel like if anyone's listening, watching, and was sort of like skeptical in the beginning or whatever, you have earned their trust, I believe, at this point, right? Already. And in the beginning too, like when I said, "Oh, I'm kind of a skeptic," like were you just like ready to like end the interview and be like, whatever? Like, is that why you dove in so hard? Because I love that you did. I really, really.
You know, I was like, when you said that, I was like, that's fine. Like, I just, you know, like, I already said it. Like, I'm not living my life to convince anybody of anything. Like, I'm living my life to be in alignment with my truth and my values and to do what I think is important. And if somebody wants to come along and like, I don't believe you. No, this is not about you, by the way. Or if they have like resistance to it in any way, or like, I'm skeptical. Like, there's a difference between like skeptical, because I feel like that's like this like crunchy, like kind of rude energy, versus like a curiosity where it's like, okay, I'm willing to listen and I'm not going to be a dick about it. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, I mean, I've definitely had, you know, and also too, I don't know, like I've just been putting myself out there on social media for like probably a decade at this point. And so I've had plenty of people like tell me that they think like I'm a kooky bitch, and it's, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, I don't, you know, you can feel that way. I get why maybe you feel that way from your perspective, your trajectory, your experiences. That's okay. But for me, like, this is my truth from my experiences, from my body, what I resonate with. And also I'm going to keep doing what I think is of value for my life, and also like the people that I help. And that like, that's my focus. And I just tune everything else out because I just don't think it matters when you compare it to those things, you know, like,
yeah.
So when you said that, I was just like, that's fine. Like, I can have a conversation without taking any of it personally, if that were to show up or try to convince you, because, you know, I don't desire to spend my energy that way, I guess.
No.
And I love your response to it, because this isn't a show where like, I'm a skeptic, tell me why I should believe in ghosts or like whatever. It's not like that. I just want to I would believe you. I just want to present it in a way where it's like, yo, if I'm a skeptic and I have an open mind, you should too, kind of a thing. That's more where I always come from with this sort of thing, because I mean, as a previous guest said, they're skeptical, right? I had someone who practices witchcraft on the show, and she's like, I'm skeptical, but it's sort of the way you perceive things and this and that. And I've had, someone who practices tantra on the show, same sort of thing. You can be skeptical and still see. So yeah, we welcome the openness, and like, I mean, what's funny is like some of the things that you think are going to be out there and, like you said, woo woo, right? They turn out not to be so fucking weird. It's the other stuff everybody's doing in normal, quote unquote, normal relationships that wind up being super fucked up and weird and just damaging. All of that being said, so one thing you did say that I do want to dial into more is that you are interested in working with people where you're not just like a fucking magician at a kid's birthday party making balloons and shit. Like, you're not gonna fucking solve all of their problems, right? They're gonna pay you well because what you do is amazing and hard and all of the things. But at the same time, they're gonna have to not only work, right? And correct me wherever I might be wrong, but they're also gonna have to like own all of their shit that's blocking their fucking way out, right? If you could talk a little bit more about that, I would love that.
Yeah. So, like, I don't work with unwilling people, like, I'm not chasing people down to work with me. And that's like a standard, like I put myself out there, I put my stuff out there, and people have to come and get it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not, it's kind of like in dating, right? Like, I'm not chasing some guy to like love me and like texting him even though he's not texting me back. Like, if you're not texting me back, like, we're not talking. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
So it's the same kind of thing energetically in business, which I think is important because it speaks to the type of person that you attract. Because if somebody wants something, and they're willing to go and get it, that speaks to just like their readiness, right? Because, like, the work that I do with people is often uncomfortable and confronting, but but also very good, because it's not just, like pain, like these things. It's also like, wow, like I've been living with this pain or insecurity, like on a low level in the back of my mind, in my body, in my heart for years, decades even. And wow, I'm like actually starting to feel relief, like, so I think that it's like people are at this point where, like, when they come to me, where they're just done, like they're done with it and they're really ready and they're really willing to like do something about it. And they are at this point where they understand, that they might have to do a little bit of confronting work, but it just feels so worth it, because not doing that work like feels worse in the long run, and probably even in the short term as well. And so, yeah, like, if somebody doesn't want to work with me, if somebody thinks I'm crazy, if somebody like, that's cool. Like, we're not a match, but I am a match with a lot of people that do work with me and that do hire me and that do join my programs and that do follow me, and I'm here for them and I'm here for those people. And if those people over there want to become one of these people in the right timing, that's cool too. The door is always open, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a no bullshit, lots of reward if you're willing to risk, sort not even risk, but like if you're willing to work, kind of a thing. So that's fucking great. And your personality backs that up, that you're, intelligent and clearly brave and strong, right? But you're not going to put up with fucking someone who's not gonna, want to get rid of the horrificness or whatever is blocking their progress. So okay, let's say I come to you and I'm like, Gianna, I've had 10 dating partners in the last week, month. And I think I'm an avoidant attachment. I hate dating. I hate it all. Help me. Right. Once I like wipe the, Taco Bell, like hot sauce off and, throw the beer cans away, like where do we go from there? What's your typical?
Well, so I'm going to talk while simultaneously plugging in my charger because my battery is draining at a rapid rate,
Sure.
unfortunately. So,
Go for it.
apologies for
Yeah.
that. But,
No problem.
Okay. So as far as, I don't know, a couple things.
And it doesn't have to be specific to what I just said, but like, let's say a client comes to you and it's like, I need help. Like, what's the protocol?
So, I mean, it's like, if we're talking like one-on-one kind of basis, obviously it depends on what the person like brings to me and like where their state of mind is. But if you're coming to me with like, I hate dating, I'm done, that is a little bit of a victim mindset, right? So there is a level of, just where I would probably meet you accordingly and be like, okay, so you hate dating, you feel like you're done, but typically like the people, when they come into my world, they have like a level of awareness around that, like around those kinds of feelings. So they're like, like, I just feel like I hate dating. I'm done. It's like men suck, women suck, people suck, it's like there's a level of they're giving their power away, and they are like allowing their experiences to close them off instead of taking like ownership of their part in the experiences, or where they're maybe just giving their power away in those experiences, right? So I would probably explore like, first of all, I get it. Like, there are people that do some really like hurtful things, and there are some situations out there that are really hurtful and painful and do suck, right? And that's real and that's valid and that's true. But ultimately, we cannot control other people. But what we can control is what I call cleaning up our side of the street and what we're available for, what we're a match for, and what we allow ourselves to let into our lives, right? So I would probably begin to explore, like, where is that level of pain and resentment coming from? Like, what do you hate about relationships? Like, what do you feel is like so painful and uncomfortable? And then they would probably say something like these men, they just are inconsistent and they just never text me back. Like, they'll like be into me at first and then they just like fall off the face of the earth, and I just can't take it, and it just makes me feel so bad, and I'm starting to worry if I'll ever find that person. My biological clock is ticking. I feel rejected. I feel like I'm not good enough. I feel so anxious. Like, I just get so anxious that they're just going to pull away. And those would be the things we would start to explore.
If you had to name the character in whose voice you were just doing, what would it be? Just out of curiosity, because I have a name in my head.
I don't know.
I'll just see if it matches.
For some reason, I want to say like Tiffany. I don't know, but like when I say that character, like I do have like my personality. Like I'm very silly and I can be a bit sarcastic, but I'm also just like with my clients, I am very like tender and loving, and like when they bring something to me, like I'm not gonna like make fun of them for it or anything like that.
Of course not.
But I am playful. Like, I am very playful with when I explain things. So, when I described Tiffany was what I just named her, I guess. It's just to really like set her voice apart from mine, and I'm being silly.
Exactly.
So no offense to anybody that maybe feels those feelings, because they are valid, real.
Yeah, and I was gonna say Linda. I was like gonna be shocked. You're like Linda. I'm like, oh shit, Linda. Yeah, and I do people's voices all the time, and I do them way worse than you do. Believe me. People are like, is that supposed to be me? I'm doing it right now. Very, very meta. Okay, so people come to you and they have these issues, and then so you kind of like then go to find the root of where this may have started. Is it always the parents?
No.
Okay. Because I feel like that's a thing, right? Like it's usually a childhood trauma.
When there's like this general like overview feeling, it's usually the parents, right? When there's just like, I just feel like men are always going to let me down. Like there's just like this general like negative feeling, or like I just feel like they're going to leave, or I just feel like I'm not enough. Like those like kind of like general like negative feelings tend to go deep and usually into childhood. Because there's usually like an original wound or trauma or a repetitive kind of situation from a young age that kind of like stores that in your brain as like just a general overview of how you see men, women, life, relationships in general. But sometimes there can just be like sometimes we get like stories upon stories upon stories of like bullshit. So like I'll use myself as an example because I'm happy to share mine and I'm not going to share other people's. But so like, a big pattern for me used to be like emotionally unavailable men. It's like I would just always attract those, always. And I was like, just love me, like don't leave me. I mean, I'm just like, that was like the inner child feeling. I'm just like, why don't you love me? Why am I not enough, right? And and I would just like get like super anxious in those relationships, and that was a lot of those original feelings started before dating, right? Like they went back to childhood around like my attachment style or whatever, and just like my fears that I brought into dating that men triggered in me, right? But somebody can't, if it's not there, somebody can't trigger it, right? But so it's like I had that kind of experience where it's like another emotionally unavailable man again, like the same kind of thing again and again and again. And then like another story will start to kind of develop where it's like I kind of developed this identity where it's like I just attract emotionally unavailable men, right? And so maybe like, so there would be like a story upon a story, right? And so maybe then it's like, if after that experience and I went into dating again, I kind of had to like deal with the layers, right? Where it's like, I'm just like feeling like I'm just going to experience this kind of man again that's like emotionally unavailable and avoidant, right? And so I had to, that was not childhood. That was dating experience that had a deeper root at play,
Yeah. And from what I know, the very little amount that I know about these kinds of things, and from previous guests who've been on the show and yourself, like it can be both sometimes. Things can compound, like you said, story on story on story. So then once you sort of identify things and you move through it, like how long is the process? Or is it different for different clients? I just want to kind of get an idea out there to the listeners, to the viewers, what it would take to push past some of their, darkness and get to the other end of it.
So I really do believe we all have our own divine timing, right? Because there's different things that play into the factors of our timing around moving through things. So it's like some people might have like 3 really big painful issues, like day to day, right? Like maybe they have like massive body image insecurities that's like affecting their daily thoughts, right? And then maybe they also get massively anxious in dating. And then maybe they also really get volatile in their communication or something,
Sure.
So then for some people, those are really big things. And for another person, they might not even have any of those things, but they have other things, or they might have a little bit of those things, but they're not as intense. And so like, there's just so many different things that go into like time, like people's timing. But so as well as like just the amount of work you've maybe already done or not done, or how familiar you are with your stuff or not. But overall, there's a positive answer here. it's really, I think that when you are willing to look at your stuff and you're willing to like be committed to working through it on a regular basis, which I just think is about emotional and mental hygiene, right? Because I think that we can go through periods of life where it's like we're healing deeper trauma. And I think that it's something that people can incorporate as a part of their like day-to-day life, the same way that people do with like physical hygiene, or at least, you know, I'm assuming people listening have good physical hygiene.
Yeah, right.
You may not.
Hopefully, right.
Yeah.
Take a shower, guys.
Yeah, go brush your damn teeth, okay?
Yeah. For sure.
But it's like, so overall, like, so one of the ways that I offer coaching, for example, like with one-on-one clients, it's a 6-month package because, you know, typically like the people that come into that kind of package with me, like they have a level of awareness, but there's like at least a handful of like, or 1 or 2 to like a handful of like deep, big things that they're like really wanting to move through and come out on the other side of in a very significant way. Right. But, you know, like I'll have some clients like in that package and it's like, they will be, you know, feeling really amazing after like 4 months. And then the remaining months we're just kind of like solidifying things. And then there's some clients who work with me for 6 months and then they like continue for another 6 months to really just get really solid because they want to. And then there's people who work with me for 6 months and we go like really deep into like these things, into the core things happening. And then they do a bit more implementing after. But it's like, so as far as like timing, like I think if you're actually willing and you like show up for it, and especially if you like have potential support, which is good if you like kind of get in your own way or aren't very clear on like what's happening or how to deal with the things that are happening. I don't think it has to be like to get into a really good space. Like, I don't think it has to, and this might sound like a long time to some people, but I really don't think it is. Like maybe like 2 years tops, you know, like, but again, everybody's so different. It could be like a few months to like 2 years, but it's like, that's a drop in the bucket when you look at the rest of your life, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing is like, I think the one thing, one of the things that the pandemic did give us in a positive light is our understanding of time. How fast it can go by, how long it can fucking take to get out of the fucking or whatever. You know, like we have a more, I would hope, at least I do, have more of a respect for both the speed and the what it feels like time passing. You know, I feel like before it was kind of like, oh, you know, time flies when you're having fun, and then all of a sudden no one's having fun, and now it's 2 years later. So it really kind of gave us that, at least so with that like couple of months to 2 years for the rest of your life versus, you know, if we're doing the equation, it balances out, I think. You know, I mean, that's some deep work.
Yeah, but it's like everybody's different because it's like in that it's really like when you go through this like journey of healing. Like I feel like people just get to this point where they're like, I need to like work on some shit, right? And so it's like they kind of like go into this season of their life, right? And that season can be like a summertime. It can be a hot girl summer. You know what I mean? It can be a year, you know? It can be like, this is my year that I like really learn to love being alone, and I work on my self-love, and I take care of myself, and I confront my childhood trauma, you know, like that's great. You know what I mean? But it's like along the way, you can have these really powerful breakthroughs and shifts and like have really good days and make a lot of progress that's very significant. But it is a journey. Like, and I don't think that I do like one-off sessions and stuff every now and then. I do like courses and things like that. But when I work with someone like in a one-on-one way, like primarily like in my schedule, it's people in 6-month packages. Because it's like, I hate it. And this was something that I experienced when doing psychic readings, where it's like the people that did kind of come to me for personal development. And I guess there's nothing inherently wrong with this, but I did not like it as a facilitator, where it's like somebody would like book a session with me and be like, wow, like I feel so much better about like this fight that I keep getting into with my dad. or my relationship pattern that's just the same guy and the same shit again. And then it's like they would maybe book another session with me like 3 months down the road and they'd be like the same thing, you know, like not necessarily with the same person, but maybe, you know, like,
right.
Like sometimes it's just like it takes work and it takes consistency and it's not often a quick fix, you know what I mean? And that's not a bad thing, you know, like invest into yourself, like take the time for yourself.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah, I think, you know, I mean, look at fucking therapy, right? Like, what are you going to do with one therapy session? Like when you go to therapy, usually the first couple are like, oh, we're doing intake. I can't give you any fucking guidance right now, you know, or whatever. So when you look at it through that lens,
that can also be
and you're right. Like yeah, well, of course it's frustrating. I mean, we're human. It's like, you know, I want my fucking, you know, headphones or fucking weirdo back scratcher thing. Boom, I'm on Amazon. It's in my shit the next fucking day, right? I'm on Bumble. No. Yes, boom, right away, right? So we want this, this thing now. We want it yesterday. We want to know what the next problem is. We can start freaking out about that. And self-work is a fucking, it's not easy, but I do think, and it takes a long fucking time, but I do think that it's becoming more popular, just in the zeitgeist, really. It's sort of in the ether to be self-aware. You have a lot of like, you know, I hate the word fucking gurus, but like, you know, you have influencers or like personalities. I hate the word influencer too, but you know what I mean? There are personalities out there who have made their stake, claim their stake in self-awareness, and you're clearly self-aware, right? So it is a benefit to become self-aware. I think, but it does take a lot of work to realize like, hey, I suck at this, but I'm really good at this. And maybe I do this too much. Like that's a hard conversation to have with yourself, as I'm sure you're aware with your clients. Do you ever have clients that are just really difficult? And I mean, you don't have to list them out, you know what I mean? You know, obviously, right? I need their names, addresses. No.
And their Instagram.
But I just think, yeah, because we want to go look at all of their stuff. No, but I do think it's an important question.
You know, I would say there are very few and far between at this point because there's something, again, to be said about standards, right? Where for me, typically people tend to be more difficult when they're less willing. And I position my offerings in a way where they're not low bearing fruit, right? So some things are, in the sense of I like to have a level of accessibility with my work, and I do free content every single day pretty much, but it's like for the sake of diverse impact and accessibility. But when it comes to like a very deep, intimate coaching container with someone, it's usually not low bearing fruit. And so therefore I find that people come into my world for a reason and with a level of readiness and a level of readiness that makes them a lot better to work with than if I didn't have those boundaries. So they're not projecting their shit onto me necessarily. They might have a thought come up that feels like very disempowering and negative, but they're like I just feel like, will I ever really get there? You know, but they say it in a way that's like conscious, you know, where they're like, I'm struggling with this feeling, versus like letting that feeling like overcome them and be like, will I ever get there? You know, like, so.
Yes. Love this.
So yeah. I don't know. I mean, I just, not really anymore. Like I used to in the beginning. And I learned from it. Like I learned why, because I mean, I think it's a waste of time to have somebody pay me money it's a waste of their time and it's a waste of mine because somebody else could be in that space if they're just like fighting, and not
Right.
wanting to change and not willing, So
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a goofy question, but it's always something I like to ask of people just to see what their experience. You'd be surprised some of the answers that I've gotten, because it is a real thing. It's two human beings trying to work at a solution to a problem, and so there's always going to be things that are more difficult. But I guess um the stuff you're putting out there, the people that it's attracting that are tuning into that, like, oh yeah, shit, that's me, and this looks good, and she seems trustworthy. Like, it's not like they're already sort of ready for a change, and they've already sort of settled on coming to you for it. So it would be a lot different if you're like going down to the bus station and like harassing someone, like, we really got to let your father off the hook, man. Like, who are you, or whatever. It's not like that, I guess.
yeah, there's
Okay.
trust. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
and
trust for sure. Like,
yeah.
and there's something to be said about what creates that trust, right? Like, and I think that me sharing my story like creates trust. I think that the fact that I give people free stuff every single day that's helpful, that's enlightening, that helps them have a shift, that makes them feel trust because they're like, wow, like that really helped me, you know. And then we're either aligned from there or we're not. They're either period. So
Yeah, and there is a level of you can tell, I mean, clearly from this show, you can tell like you're telling the truth, and you're being transparent. But I mean, I went through a shitload of your content, just sort of researching you and getting an idea of who you are for this interview. And there is a level of, I'm doing this because I want to, but this means a lot to me, and here, this is for you, sort of thing. So whether that's honesty or whatever, but it is a trust thing where two people have to trust each other to move forward and work together. And yeah, you are giving a lot of people all of that. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I asked you on the show, to be honest, because we obviously, I want the best of the best on the show. And
thank
I'm
you.
not saying anybody else, but I mean, you gotta bring quality guests, man, right? So there's that. So with everything, like, TikTok and Bumble and Tinder and all of this stuff that out there, right? And we're coming out of a pandemic or whatever's happening. People are sort of getting back out there. What is something that you're seeing with relationships that you think, just, and it can be a general thing, right, that you think is like, that's not good, that's not right, that's not how a relationship should be?
So, and I have like two completely different thoughts coming to my mind.
Yeah.
So
Let's do it. Let's be conflicting.
So I'll start with the simpler one, but yeah. Anyways, so I think a lot of people, like when we're kind of like talking about like on the other end of the pandemic or whatever, I think a lot of people get a little fixated on like, can you find like high quality partners like online on dating apps? Like you can't, and I just think that that's like not a high value question, because I think that the same people complaining about that are the same people who have a little bit more stuff going on than whether or not they should be on a dating app, that factors into filtering certain people out or not, or maintaining certain connections or not, that people aren't really addressing, that would solve a lot of that.
Right.
More than certain apps that they're on. And then a completely separate can of worms, so feel free to interrupt me if you have thoughts on the first can of worms, because this is going to be a completely different one. Something that I feel happy about, and this might not be something that like other people are as aware of. But something that I feel very happy about that's like more on the rise is like the death of like 50-50 relationships between like in like a traditional like hetero dynamic. Because I think that, and this was true for me at one point as well, I think that women in particular that happen to date men often find themselves in a position where they are doing a lot of emotional labor for their partners, being mothers, you know, bringing children into this world, caretaking for the children more often, right? And this isn't true for every dynamic, of course. And then also still like working a job and like paying like 50% of the home expenses. And that makes me feel a little bit of rage. I'm like, that is so fucked up, you know? And I think that it's like, and I think that that is women, there's like this like interesting balance for women where it's like they don't want to be dependent upon a man, which here for that. But having independence doesn't mean putting like 80% of the energy or 70% of the energy into the relationship in just as a whole, you know, like it not being like this equal energy exchange of value, right? So something that I feel happy about is a lot of women are, you know, owning financial sovereignty, but maybe not paying not paying bills at all, or just paying less of them, or, you know, allowing their partners to, or maybe like financially contributing in some ways, but then, you know, just receiving a lot more from their partners in other ways. Yeah, and that was just another can of worms that came to my mind, I guess.
No, it's a great fucking can of worms to fucking crack open. So essentially, and again, and this time you stop me, like, you know, where I have it wrong or whatever. What I'm hearing is sort of, it's not necessarily all about finance, and it's not necessarily all about emotions, but like, men should give more or just as much as the woman between the two, finance and emotions, because we're putting too much responsibility and weight and sort of expectation on a woman to be a mom to their partner, sometimes to be a mom to the potentially, I guess, children, be a friend, be a lover, be sexy, pay the bills, go to work, all of these things. Is that what you're saying? Is that your message?
Yeah, I would say that's an accurate takeaway. But you know, because it's not that like we can't be there for our partners, but it's like, yeah, there's just like, and I've had to couch this in myself, because it's like, for me, you know, I feel like I'm a feminine woman in a lot of ways, where I'm not a mom at this point, but I do desire to be like when I feel ready for that. But I'm like, and I clean, like I'm a clean person. Like I like things to be clean, and you know, I take on a lot of that naturally. I enjoy cooking. Like I just enjoy it. You know, like it's not something that's like, oh my God, I have to cook. Like I like it feels kind of like creative and like a way to like nourish myself in like this loving way. Like I enjoy taking that time. And there's this even like my partner and I, we have a dog, and he's a puppy, and he is like so wild. And there's this like nurturing instinct that wants to like kick in, I'm just like conscious of, where it's like, no, like I don't want to take on more than feels like genuinely right. Like I saw this, it made me like, I saw this TikTok or something. It was like some kind of video online where that this just like describes this perfectly, where there was this mother, this husband and wife, and they had like a newborn baby, you know, and from what I hear, babies are fairly high maintenance in their first little chunk of life, right? As we know, right? And,
I would imagine, yeah.
Right. And, and that comes with the territory. And, like a lot of that goes on the mom because, that she's probably breastfeeding or just whatever. Right. And she's recovering physically from labor and all of that. But it's like, there was this video where, this woman was just, like knee deep in like baby. Right. And then just was exhausted and wanted like 15 minutes to herself to go take a fucking shower. To just go shower, like clean herself, not be in her own like stink, like 15 minutes, right? And gives the baby to her partner, to her husband. And as soon as she comes out, like she's like hearing the baby cry, like while she's in the shower and feeling like just this like torture, like this a little emotional torture with herself. And then and then as soon as she comes out, her husband's like, here you go. He wouldn't stop crying. Here, take him. Like, and it's like, there's a motherly instinct that wants to like, oh, let me just do it. It almost is like, I'll just do it. Fine. Like it's easier, like in the short term, but in the long run, like takes a toll. And, it's like, I think women have to, if they resonate with that, have to check that. Where they have to let themselves receive and hold that standard and not tolerate not receiving like some genuine fair support from a partner, whether that be with children, with a dog, like just in general cohabitation, like, yeah, I don't know.
No, I love it. And you really hit something that like strikes a chord with me because I've found myself, and it's one of the reasons I started this show, like just fucking insanely frustrated. And to be honest, like fucking disgusted at most, of the behavior of most men. I have some friends that are fucking amazing fathers. I have some friends that are, and they do the goddamn thing, but like, the most of the things that I've seen have been pretty fucking vile. And I do think that that we lay on expectations that are not only unrealistic, but almost torturous on women. And we do it without even fucking batting an eye because that's the way it's been for 4,000 years and da 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 da. And it's,
Ooh,
the whole,
patriarchy.
yeah, the whole like, let's pay women less. Let's not let them do anything that could be deemed this, or let's comment on a woman's outfit if she's, if her tits are out or what. And like, I was in a room on Clubhouse, it's like a fucking, for the people that don't know what Clubhouse is, like an audio social media thing. And it was about sex and relationships. And there was women commenting on if women should wear something out to the first date, and she dressed like a slut and da 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 and all these things. And there's men commenting. I was like, yeah. I chimed in. I'm like, listen, I just want to say one thing. I'm like, shouldn't it just be up to the person who's going on the fucking date? You know what I mean? Like, it boggles my mind because you're totally right. We want women to be mothers. We want them to be porn stars. We want them to be hookers. We want them to be cooks. We want them to be maids. We want them to shut the fuck up. We want them to all of these things, right? And they're not getting anything but like trash partners and ripped apart in the public. And then now with all the stuff that's going on, just to end this soapbox rant on that, but like all the stuff with like abortion and shit, like now you can't even do anything with your own body. Hey, congrats, you're a woman. So yeah, so it pisses me off, and it makes me
Tell me about
really
it.
fired up, and it makes me like sick to my fucking stomach because I have a mother and my grandmother were insanely stronger than most men that tried to raise me or whatever. And I have sisters, and it's like, dude, what are we doing? So I think clearly, your view is like dead on, and I think that we should talk about that more. I mean, in your opinion, what do we do as a society?
Pow, bad. We slap sense into people. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, I'm for it.
just had to like express that for a second. You understand?
Yeah, I mean, we tried everything else, you know.
So, I mean, as a woman, right? I cannot control men and I cannot control other women. I can just control my standards and what I accept, and what I feel I deserve, and reject less than that. And I can invite other women to choose that. I can show them that it's an option. I can embody that myself, and other people will do with it what they will. But, you know, I think that all we can do is our part, right? Like all we can do is our part. And, you know, something that kind of feels related to this, that's kind of like maybe in the spiritual, like tantric realm of things a little bit, but,
Sure.
it makes me think of like kind of like masculine, feminine polarity in a relationship, right? Which, if you're not familiar with the subject, for anybody listening, masculine, feminine polarity isn't about your sex, right? It's about if you desire a relationship that has a level of polarity where each partner leans more, one partner leans more in one direction than the other, right? So there's a more of a femme partner, more of a masculine partner, however that looks for you. So for me, you know, I feel like I believe we all have like masculine and feminine, you know, qualities or whatever, in the energetic, emotional sense. So like feminine. So how I heard it described, which I resonate with, is feminine is the water in a river, and the masculine is the river bank holding the water, right? So the feminine is like creative, expressive, intuitive, like, you know, connected to emotion, and the masculine is maybe like linear, like, you know, problem solving, like, you know, action taking, like blah blah whatever. So we all have both, and we will usually find ourselves leaning more in one direction or the other, but not necessarily. But for me personally, I lean more feminine. I feel and identify as a feminine woman, and there's something to be said about, and I feel like this is kind of like a hot topic these days in like the relationship sphere, in the personal development world, where, you know, women are really craving like masculinity in men, at least women that are, you know, feminine, hetero, like, you know, straight feminine women, right? They're craving a masculine partners in order to feel like they can feel safe to just like be themselves, right? And to just like drop into their true essence, because it's like there's something to be said about like the deep biological feeling where a man, like if a man, and this can be true in the reverse as well in different ways, where like you want a man to be trustable, right? And so a trustable man like it's about who they are and what they embody. It's not about what they say, right? So like, and it's like this deep biological drive that's like really kind of like testing almost, or like looking to see like, is this someone that I should like maybe have children with, that I can like, you know, it's the deep biological stuff that's like, you know, we need to have babies and keep them alive and like be safe and not die, you know, like, and it's like, you know, like if a man like embodies like emotional toxic traits, or maybe like doesn't take care of their health, or, you know, doesn't take leadership in certain situations where maybe they wish that they would, there can be this like, like, I don't feel safe to relax. I don't feel like I can count on you. I don't feel like I can trust you. And so I feel like I have to take charge, and I don't fucking like doing that as much as I feel like I have to. Right. So it's like, I feel like I have to solve problems. I have to be the grounding presence all the fucking time, you know? And it's like, I think that there should be a bit of both and give and take in a relationship, of course, but there's something, yeah, it just makes me think of that, where it's like, I think that's what a lot of women want, honestly. And there's, a lot of my clients and my past experiences as well. It's like when we have like wounded relationships with men or a father figure, right? Where, and I personally experienced both through like my biological father and my stepfather growing up, who's no longer my stepfather. Thank God. But so like bio dad, alcoholic, unavailable, finances were a mess. Like that was, and he was like not in my life that much growing up. And then even though we have a good relationship now, and then stepdad, controlling, insecure, abusive, like narcissist, like toxic masculine energy, right? So, and those can be like the shadow side of like masculine energy in men. I feel like where it's like there's either this control, insecurity, like abusive kind of vibe, or there's like emotional avoidance. And when young women and people and men as well and people, but it's like I tend to work more so with women, so I'll just speak to that. But women, when they experience that at a young age, like relating to men, there starts to be this feeling like if they have like untrustable father figures, that affects them. That affects how safe they feel in the world, and how they will maybe perceive and relate to men in the future on a subconscious level, where maybe they feel like men are like, they may find themselves being very emasculating, for instance, to men, where it's like they like cut men down, they don't trust them, they like are belittling, right? Because there's like this wounded feeling where they don't trust men, and they might find themselves from that place like rendezvousing, interacting with, because and this is where I think law of attraction comes into the picture, as well as on a psychology lens, where it's like we unconsciously we have like confirmation bias, and we unconsciously are drawn to something familiar. So you may find yourself playing out that same painful experience as an adult, where it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, where it's like where a man who they might find themselves dating a man who isn't really like trustable, right? And trustable, like a trustable man is integrity, as well as a woman, but it's like, and that's not necessarily the man bending to the woman's will, but it's just having a general sense of integrity as a person that allows a woman to relax, and be like, okay, I don't have to, be in the driver's seat 24/7. Like I can be in my emotion. Like I can feel, I can maybe be more nurturing and maybe contribute more in that way in the dynamic or something. Does that make sense? It was long-winded, but.
Yeah, no. I mean, it does make sense, because what you're saying, is that, and it's a very, it's a more intellectual, version of the thing I always say, which is I'm not looking for a relationship really. Like if I were looking for a relationship, I wouldn't be looking for that kind of relationship where it's all this sort of, I'm in charge or you're in whatever. Fuck that. No one needs another parent, right? So for me, I always say like something along the lines of like I would be interested or curious about having like an adult partnership where we help each other fucking do well, because that's where I thought relationships were supposed to be at this juncture, and clearly they're not. So your intellectual, smarter way of saying that, it does make a lot of sense. People should bring so all of that amazing shit, tons of value, right, with you, Gianna. All that being said, it's on record. In closing for this episode, if you had to give the listener, the viewer, someone in the audience, like just some sharp, real, from the heart advice from you on maybe getting back out there, feeling worthy enough to get what the fuck you want, what you deserve, what you desire, what would that advice be?
So be realistic with where you're at, and really like acknowledge like what you feel, like, and really like reflect, excuse me, like really reflect on your most recent experiences in dating, even if it's been a while, and take your lessons, right? Take your lessons from it. So like, you know, what triggers came up for you? What behaviors and choices would you like to change for yourself? You know, like really take those and like start to actually do those things, like work on those things before you get yourself back out there again. Otherwise, like you're just going to find yourself likely in a very similar scenario. Because I think that it's a lot of people like to think that I just need to find someone different. I just need to find someone different. And that might be true, but also like you also have to change the part of yourself that was like available or compatible with the previous experience that you had. Otherwise, like you're not going to necessarily hold the standard that you need to hold in order to sustain and let in like what it is that you do want in a different, like, and to have a different person come into your life. So, you know, and like, you know, feel your feelings, like, you know, don't push yourself when you're in this like raw emotion to like get back out there if you're not ready. Like it's okay to like be there and like give yourself time to like process and, you know, move through things a bit. But yeah, really like explore those feelings. And if worthiness, like be really honest with yourself about what you want. And if you don't feel worthy of like holding that standard, like look at like what, like why not? Like, why not? Like, what do you think you're supposed to be, you know, to be worthy, right? Like, where did that come from? Because I guarantee, like, you weren't born feeling that way about yourself. It came from some kind of like experience in childhood of like a perfectionism pattern, or it comes from like society, right? That says if you're not a millionaire and wifed up and fucking owning a house by the time you're 26, then you're a loser, you know, like whatever. Like, look at those ideas and like be kinder to yourself. Like, be like treat yourself the way, like if you have like a little child, a niece, a nephew, like a puppy, like something in your life that you care about, and if they came to you and they were like, I feel like a loser, I feel like I'm like too fat to be loved, or like, would you really like, do you want them to feel that way about themselves? You know, like, no, of course not. You'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, oh my God, like who cares? Like you've been stressed. Like, yeah, like prioritize yourself more, whatever. But like give yourself that tenderness and that kindness and care that you would give to the person that maybe means the most to you, you know, like give that to yourself in your relationship with yourself first, and that's where you have to start. And obviously, like, we have our own cans of worms that maybe we have to unpack and address in order to like really lock in that sense of self-worth. But it's like, when that becomes the feeling inside of yourself, if somebody treats you less than how you feel on the inside, it's no longer going to resonate. But if you do not feel worthy when somebody else doesn't treat you like you're not much, when somebody else treats you like you're not much, that's gonna resonate. That's gonna feel comfortable for you, because that is a mirror to your relationship to yourself. So that's where you have to start. So that's what I would say.
Whoo, boy. Gianna Rackham, thank you so much for being on the show. You are a fucking badass. You're a gangster. I love it. Thank you so much. Where can people find you? Where can people give you money?
Yeah. So I am on the social medias, but I would say I'm the most active on Instagram. So my Instagram handle is at Gianna11Light. I'm also on Facebook though too. So follow me on Instagram, connect with me there. I'm on my stories all the time, and I post like free content like pretty much every day that's meant to be of value and all of that. And I post about my offerings as well. But, you know, the world can be crazy. Social media can be a little crazy. So you're also welcome to, you know, come to my website, which is giannalightworker.com. And I have like an email list as well. So if you're not like big on the social media, like I send out helpful content to my subscribers as well. So you can sign up there.
Yeah. Totally. And it all will be linked below in the show notes and the YouTube notes. Thank you so much for being here. I definitely want to have you back. I feel like we touched on a couple things that may have to be their own episodes, which is really fucking exciting and cool. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I feel like there was like so many different things we could have gone into, but I think.
Yeah, well, and maybe we will. Maybe we will. Is that a tease? Probably, yeah. So,
That's okay.
See you soon.
Massive thank you to Gianna Rackham for not only being on the show, but for being so goddamn brave and sharing all of that stuff with us, because it's incredibly important, right? But also, that was her doing that and bringing that. So thank you very, very much. If you guys got value out of it, if you appreciated the interview, follow her on social media, reach out to her, work with her. If you're appreciating Sex Party, on the other hand, and you want to show some love, you can do that by subscribing to the show, leaving a review if you're listening to this on platforms like Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, all of those things. If you're watching on YouTube, hello, how are you? You okay? I totally understand. You can like the video on YouTube. You can subscribe on YouTube. You can leave a comment. As always, you guys don't have to do any of this fucking nonsense, but I appreciate it greatly if you do. This stuff these are the items that help the show grow and grow quickly. Love you guys. Drop me a DM on Instagram if you want to chat. I'll see you back here next week.
Thanks for listening. The party continues next week. Click subscribe and let's make this a regular thing. Follow the show on Instagram and Twitter @SexPartyFM. Follow Dustin @DustinRybka.